If you had told me 7 months ago that a 74-year-old Jewish socialist
but he's from Brooklyn,
who does a pretty good imitation of Larry David, and somebody that my parents knew 100-fold over, right? Always good for an argument at the dinner table. I know he has the Weavers at Carnegie Hall album somewhere in his house. But if you had told me that this person would be managing a credible campaign to the heir to a pretty successful political figure, I would have said, come on, you're crazy. So, is this is a cable news kind of questions. How much of this is Bernie Sanders and how much of it is a dissatisfaction with Hillary Clinton?
I mean, I think a lot of it is dissatisfaction with Hillary Clinton. I think that what is always striking when everybody talks about this matchup of the 74-year-old Democratic Socialist versus Hillary Clinton is just 74, and yet he is winning overwhelmingly with younger voters. Right. And that has been very surprising to Hillary Clinton and to her husband. And disappointing to them. She genuinely believed, and you saw this in New Hampshire in the final days of the primary, where you had her surrogates, particularly Madeleine Albright, using a very famous line that Madeleine Albright has used for many, many years about how there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women, but she used it in the context of, and go vote for Hillary, everybody, and it did not go over very well. Hillary Clinton thinks that this makes her new, and that this gives a newness to her campaign, and it clearly would, just objectively, to have a first female Democratic nominee, but younger women in particular, but younger voters in general, aren't seeing it that way.
Now, to some extent, you mentioned the fact that the Republicans have been telling their people for years, don't trust the media. If we flip the coin, the argument about inequality and Wall Street greed has been a far more prevalent argument among Democrats and liberals, and certainly in the days of Bill Clinton and his move to the center and his courting of Wall Street. So to what extent is Bernie Sanders inheriting or brilliantly speaking to a feeling that has certainly been growing since the financial meltdown of 2008?
I think in a lot of ways, Sanders represents a sort of long deferred version on the left of what the Republicans worked through in their primaries in 2010, 2012, 2014, where you had, in 2010, I remember covering a couple of governor's races, Senate races, where there was a clear front runner who just went up in smoke because they had been supportive of the bailout. And Democrats have not really had the chance to vent like that the way Republicans did over time. Republicans are clearly not done venting, but you did have this weird spectacle for a number of years where the left party in the country was sort of lockstep behind a president who was asking everybody to just take it down a notch when it comes to being mad at the financial sector. And so you could see that the demand, you could imagine the demand being there for a long time. I do think the generational aspect of this is really striking, and I do wonder if it heralds some kind of underlying change in the way young people have been sort of habituated to vote. That there's this kind of 90% support in some states for a guy who, when you look at sort of the full range of issues on the table here, he talks about a really, really narrow set of them.
This is the part, again, that it's one of the many, many things that has left me kind of blinking in the sun. They're waiting to be turned into fossilized fuel, which is, most candidates, even if they have a theme, they have variations on a theme. But my sense about Sanders is, if you, in the middle of a debate, if the moderator said the hall is on fire, Sanders would say, that's because the greedy contractors with their millionaires and billionaires didn't have fire safety regulations.
Right.
He seems incapable of saying anything else under any circumstances, and yet, he's hit a chord.
We're in a weird moment where Hillary Clinton is well ahead on delegates, both committed delegates and then the superdelegates, which are this weirdness of the Democratic Party where you're an elected official or a member of the party or something and you can choose who to be with. But she's also poised in the range of states that are coming up to not do particularly well, and her campaign has made that clear. So you have this odd track where she is moving toward getting the nomination, and yet she's running against someone, as you say, who has this one message and has not shown much of an interest in adapting to seem better on foreign policy. His answers continue to be sort of fairly one note. He, as you said, he always brings it back to income inequality. He always brings it back to Wall Street. What is striking to me about Bernie Sanders, to your question, is there's been this, I think, mythologizing of him as this ingenue who just sort of never thought this was going to get this far. And I think it's true that he never thought it was going to get this far, but he's been doing this for 30 years. It's not like he's new to the political scene.
Right.
And he's also not this disinterested party who doesn't want to get sullied by negativity, which is what his folks were saying for a very long time. He's a pretty adept wielder of the political blade, and he has gotten much better in these debates against her. He was quite good the other night.
I thought
and people aren't ready for it to end, I think is the bottom.